have to say another thing about them. They're sticking with us. We've got them from the babies up. As soon as the kid could talk, he started to say Metzi, Metzi, not Papa, not Mama, Metzi, Metzi, Metzi.
Oh, welcome back to the Mookie Chilson channel, and you are looking live at Charles Dillon Casey Stengel. And this is an episode all about the old professor. Of course, Casey Stengel is a beloved member of the Mets history. He is a cherished icon here at the Mookie Chilson World Headquarters. I love collecting Casey and reading about Casey and listening to Casey. And so why am I doing this Casey episode now? Well, that's because a donor has come forward with a new addition to the Casey Stengel wing at the Mookie Chilson World Headquarters, and I want to show it to you, and I want to lead up to it though. So stick with me. Why is Casey Stengel in front of you right now? Well, Casey Stengel was an iconic figure before he ever got to the Mets. He was, of course, the manager of the New York Yankees during their great heydays in the late 40s and 50s. And a pennant machine, a World Series machine, but at age 70, the Yankees dismissed him in 1960. They said, enough is enough. There were reports of Casey dozing off in the dugout, which may or may not have been true. But Casey went back to retire in Southern California at age 70 and right off into the sunset. He was a legend. After all, he didn't need money, anything like that. But the Mets came a-calling, and Casey answered the phone, and he took the job. Perhaps flattered. Again, Casey was an American icon. Everybody who knew baseball knew who Casey Stengel was. And so if you're going to kickstart a franchise, the Mets could not sign free agents because the free agency didn't exist. And so the way to kickstart the franchise was to get the biggest name they could find, and that was Casey Stengel. And so when Casey picked up the phone and said, yes, finally, I'm going to read from this book, Once Upon the Polo Grounds, The Mets That Were, by Leonard Schechter. According to Leonard's reporting, when Casey agreed to manage the Mets on September 29, 1961, he leaned back into the deep swivel chair in the office in his bank in North Hollywood, California, and talked about how happy he was to be running the New York Knickerbockers. It was a half hour at least before he realized they were called the Mets, and a week at least before he started calling them amazing. So Casey, again, the hilarious figure that he is, it took him a little bit to get into the swing of things, but get into the swing of things he did. And how do you launch a franchise, but with a parade? The Mets were one of the main floats in the 1961 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There they are sitting on like a clown car kind of thing. And you can see it says Meet the Mets there. And up top there, you can't quite see it from this angle, but I'll show you from this angle. It says Casey Stengel. He was the marquee. This was the name that the Mets wanted to advertise to fans, to say, this is a serious franchise. Come out and watch us. Of course, he's on the float with, that's Billy Lowe's, the former Brooklyn Dodgers pitcher, who the Mets had hoped would become part of their pitching staff in 1962, although he never did. That's Monty Irvin, who at that point was working for Rheingold Beer, which was the Mets beer. Their Mets advertiser of choice was Rheingold. And Gil Hodges, of course, the first baseman for the old Brooklyn Dodgers, turned to LA Dodgers, and now he had come back into the fold, traded back to New York to be the Mets first baseman to start off. And so there's Casey Stengel. And when, like I said, parades were it. And so when the Mets finally launched on their first inaugural season, before they even got to the Polo Grounds, they had a parade to City Hall. And there is Casey in the front center with the Mayor Wagner of New York and the whole team behind him. And Casey, again, was the toast of the town. And there he is at City Hall throwing styrofoam balls out to the fans. And I have shown this before, but I like to think that this styrofoam ball, which is one of the balls that was thrown out at that parade, maybe that was in Casey's hand. What do we think? Anyway. So that's the most expensive styrofoam ball I ever had. And so the Mets went to go play their first game. And one of the things I picked up very recently, Speaking of, well, this is cardboard. It was not cheap. This is a ticket stub from the first ever Mets game in New York City at the Polo Grounds, Friday, April 13th. This is game one, opening day. It says it right there. This was against the Pirates. The Mets lost 4-3. And so there were 12,000 paid attendants at the wet and cold and rainy day on Friday, April 13th. And this is the ticket stub of one of theirs, who I'm sure could not have been going to see anybody else but Casey Stengel, maybe Gil Hodges. But the Mets weren't winning, and they didn't win for many years, including 1962, 63. They were the losingest franchise in history, winning percentage-wise. But in those early days, you know, the mere existence of a National League franchise in New York, that in and of itself was a win, and Casey knew it.
Casey, how come the Mets drew a bigger box office last year than most any other team in both leagues?
Well, that's because the public in New York supported the ball club. They were loyal for years and years to the New York Giants. They were loyal to the Brooklyn Dodgers. We only had one team there, which was the Yankee team. It was doing splendid in itself, but they wanted to see another team come back into the field. And why shouldn't they go out and patronize? There's too many people in New York City. It's a cosmopolitan town in which when you go into a city of that size, there should be more than one entertainment.
And so Casey's one of my guys, and you didn't think I was going to get through this episode without showing my Casey pinhole card. This is the 1962 Topps. Now, I don't know, this may have been a Yankee fan upset and using this in the voodoo means, but there's Casey with a bunch of puncture wounds through. But Casey Stengel, New York Mets manager, of course, he's got that painted on hat. And of course, I have, this is the 1965 version of this image, which I think is the same picture they used in '64, but I just love this with the pennant there and the beautiful Mets jacket he's got there sitting on the stands at the Polo Grounds. So super cool. And so, again, Casey is one of my guys. And so you could imagine my shock when something like this wound up on my doorstep the other day. I have been looking for a Casey Stengel autograph. One of the people who knows that Casey is one of my guys is a guy that we all know by the name of Mike Petty. And Mike Petty, as we all know, and probably have heard, is a well-renowned autograph collector. And he has also had his own brush with the old professor. He tells the story of how he was sitting in the stands at Dodger Stadium with next to Casey Stengel for the uniform retirement ceremonies of Sandy Koufax, Jackie Robinson, and Roy Campanella. And so Mike sent me this, a beautiful, look at the image there. That's him standing on the dugout steps at Shea Stadium, the new Shea Stadium. And there's Casey's autograph, and you can see, look at that beautiful ballpoint pen autograph. And Casey loved signing autographs. He was, you know, again, an ambassador for the team like nobody else could have been, and was sort of the jump start, the kickstart that the Mets needed, the franchise, the town, National League Baseball in New York needed to get going. And this is a stunning piece for my collection, Mike. So thank you for this. And so I just, you know, what can I say? Super, super generous. I can't thank you enough, but maybe the only way I could thank you is by listening to Mike's favorite team. How about the LA Dodgers, who came into New York in 1964 to help wish Casey Stengel a happy 74th birthday. The old professor met them at home plate at Shea Stadium. And Don Drysdale, Maury Wills, Wally Moon, and all their friends were mic'd up and choreographed a little tune to sing the old professor for his happy birthday. So let's listen to that. Thank you to Mike for this. I'm blown away and couldn't be more appreciative. So thank you for this. And cue the boys in blue.
Casey is having a birthday, let's sing happy birthday, Casey. 74 and a gent we adore, even in last place. There is simply no doubt he is going the route, he is keeping the Mets hopes alive. Here's happy birthday till next year when Casey